Welcome, the Lord's chosen. If you ever want to know who truly holds the weight in a room, don't listen to the words. Look at the eyes. That single glance, that flicker of unease, is more honest than 1,000 speeches. Psychology tells us that the human eye can widen or contract in less than 200 milliseconds when confronted with stress or power. That's faster than most people can fake a smile, which means the truth escapes them before their mouth can even catch up. And here's the twist. When you walk in and notice that fear in their eyes, it isn't intimidation you're projecting. It's recognition. They've already measured themselves against you and realized they're underdressed for the moment. Think of it like showing up to a casual dinner, only to find out everyone else knew it was black tie. Suddenly, it's not you who looks out of place. It's them. So before you ever question your own presence, remember this. Fear doesn't lie, and their eyes already admitted the verdict long before anyone spoke. Number 1, fear isn't really about you. It's about what you remind them of. That flicker in their eyes isn't a reflection of your presence alone. It's a reflection of every unfinished battle they've been running from. When you step into the room, you don't just arrive as yourself. You arrive as a living reminder of everything they avoided, everything they couldn't face, and everything they secretly fear they'll never overcome. People carry around private mirrors in their minds. Most of the time they keep those mirrors covered with distractions, excuses, or carefully constructed versions of themselves. They rehearse confidence, they rehearse charm, they rehearse strength. But the moment someone with real presence walks in, those covers get ripped away. Suddenly they aren't looking at you. They're staring into their own reflection. That's why their eyes betray them. That's why fear leaks through. You've become the trigger that brings their hidden insecurities to the surface. It's never really about intimidation. It's about confrontation. Not you confronting them, but them confronting themselves. You remind them of the standards they fell short of, the courage they never mustered, or the power they never cultivated. Your walk, your silence, even the way you occupy space says to them, this is what you could be if you had done the work, if you had faced your truth, if you had chosen growth instead of comfort. That realization is unbearable, and the eyes expose it before they can spin a cover story. The fear in their eyes is a confession that you didn't even ask for. They're not terrified of what you might do to them. They're terrified of what you force them to see about themselves. You become proof that their excuses were never enough, that their masks are thinner than they thought, and that power is something you carry naturally while they're still trying to borrow it. This is why your presence feels heavier than your words, because it presses on the gap between who they are and who they pretended to be. And that gap burns in silence, showing up first as a flicker of fear in the eyes. That single reaction tells you more than any speech, any claim, or any attempt at bravado ever could. It's not your power they fear. It's the undeniable reminder that they never built their own. Number 2, your presence is a mirror they cannot escape. That's why the eyes give them away before anything else does. People can dress themselves in confidence, prepare lines to sound sharp, or hide behind forced laughter, but none of that survives when someone walks in who carries weight. The reason their fear is visible is because you become the reflection they've been avoiding. You don't have to say a word. Their own mind does the talking. Everyone has 2 versions of themselves, the one they show the world and the one they wrestle with in silence. Most people spend their lives running from that second version, burying it under distractions and roles that make them look stronger, more secure, more in control than they really are. But when your presence enters, the mask slips. Their eyes suddenly have nowhere to look, because what they see in you is the very thing they've been running from. It isn't that you scare them, it's that you remind them of how much they've hidden. You show them, without trying, what it looks like to carry authenticity while they've been carrying performance. You hold up a mirror that says, "This is who you really are," when no one is watching. That reflection is unbearable for people who have built their entire identity on avoiding it. That's why their gaze flickers, why fear leaks out even when they try to force a smile. And the mirror doesn't lie. It strips away the layers they worked so hard to construct. Around you, the polished stories, the fake confidence, the exaggerated strength, all of it crumbles in an instant. What remains is their raw self, and most can't stomach it. That's why fear appears in their eyes before words even leave their mouth. They aren't afraid of you as a person. They're afraid of themselves because you make them confront what they've been running from. That's the power of presence. It doesn't shout. It doesn't have to prove. It simply reveals. And the most unsettling thing for someone who has lived behind a facade is being seen clearly, even when they weren't ready. That's why the eyes always betray them. They're not staring at you. They're staring into the mirror you just forced them to face. Number 3, fear exposes the hierarchy they pretend doesn't exist. People like to act as if everyone in the room is equal, as if respect is automatically shared, and as if power is just an illusion. They build this story because it feels safer to believe that no one has the upper hand, that everyone stands on the same ground. But the moment fear shows in their eyes when you walk in, the unspoken hierarchy is revealed, and the truth can no longer be ignored. Hierarchy is not always written down or spoken out loud. It lives in the subtle reactions: who looks away first, who lowers their voice, who hesitates before speaking. That flash of fear in their eyes is the body admitting what the ego refuses to say. There is someone in the room who carries more weight, and it isn't them. They may never acknowledge it with words, but their eyes already cast the vote. This is why fear is so telling. It doesn't just show insecurity, it reveals position. The one who fears is always lower in the invisible order. They can argue, they can perform confidence, they can try to act unfazed, but fear betrays the ranking. It's an instinct the body can't hide, the same way shadows follow light. When their gaze shifts, when their expression flickers, they've confessed without meaning to. You sit higher on the scale, and they know it. The irony is that many people resist the idea of hierarchy because it challenges their pride. They prefer to act as if no one stands above them, as if the room is level. But power doesn't need permission to be recognized. It is measured by presence, by how others respond, by the way fear silently reorganizes the atmosphere. That look in their eyes is proof that hierarchy is not something you claim. It's something that reveals itself. And here's the sharp truth. It's not about arrogance, and it's not about domination. It's simply about reality. When fear appears in their eyes, it isn't you imposing authority. It's them involuntarily admitting it. They've already positioned themselves beneath you without ever saying it out loud. That is the honesty of fear. It strips away pretense and shows exactly where everyone stands in the order they swore didn't exist. Number 4, what they call discomfort is actually recognition. Most people will never admit it directly, so they disguise it with words like uneasy, awkward, or off. But the truth is, their unease around you isn't random. It's not that your presence creates something strange. It's that your presence reveals something real. The fear, the nervous glances, the sudden shift in tone, all of it is their body recognizing that the mask they've worked so hard to wear cannot survive in your company. A mask is only convincing when no one threatens it. They can play confident, they can play in control, they can play as if nothing touches them. But when you arrive, the act starts cracking. They know they're seen. They know the polished version they're presenting won't hold under your gaze. and that realization terrifies them more than anything you could ever say or do. Their so-called discomfort is just recognition in disguise, recognition that you can't be fooled, that their performance collapses, and that in your presence they have to face themselves. It's important to understand that this has nothing to do with intimidation. You're not trying to make anyone shrink, and you're not forcing their reaction. Their own soul betrays them. They recognize the gap between the image they're projecting and the truth of who they are. Around you, that gap becomes impossible to hide, and the discomfort is simply their awareness of being exposed. The reason this hits so deeply is because most people survive by maintaining those masks. They depend on others believing the illusion they put forward. But in your presence, the illusion doesn't work, and that's why they fidget, stumble over words, or try to overcompensate. They are not reacting to you. They are reacting to the collapse of their own disguise. Recognition always feels uncomfortable for the one being exposed. And that's what you see in their eyes. Not just fear, but the undeniable acknowledgement that the truth has caught up with them. They may call it discomfort, but the real word for it is confession. And that confession doesn't come from their lips. It comes from the way they can't hold their mask together when you walk in. Number 5. They're afraid because power makes lies collapse instantly. That's the part no one tells you. Lies don't need to be exposed through argument, proof, or confrontation. All it takes is the weight of genuine power entering the room, and suddenly the scaffolding of pretense falls apart on its own. When someone has built their entire identity on fabrication, they rely on others playing along with the story. But true presence doesn't play along. It doesn't even have to. The very atmosphere changes, and their carefully constructed narrative starts cracking under pressure. This is why fear leaks into their eyes. They know deep down that their house of cards was never stable. They rehearsed the role. They polished the mask. They convinced enough people to make the illusion look real. But they never accounted for what happens when someone with authentic power shows up. Your presence is the audit they never prepared for, the one test they cannot fake their way through. No excuse, no story, no exaggeration can withstand it. That's the difference between performance and reality. Performance depends on agreement. It only works if everyone else nods along. But reality doesn't need agreement. It just is. And the moment reality enters the space, performance looks flimsy and small. Their fear isn't about you threatening them. It's about their own awareness that the truth has arrived, and their lies don't have the strength to stand beside it. Most people underestimate how fragile deception really is. Lies look strong when unchallenged, but in the presence of real power, they shatter instantly. That's why their pupils betray them, why their confidence wavers, why their silence grows louder. It's not that you've done anything, it's that your existence itself unmasks them. The audit you represent doesn't require a word. It doesn't require accusation or exposure. The fear in their eyes already tells the whole story. They know the truth. They know you see it. And they know the fabrications they lived on are collapsing in real time. That collapse is unavoidable because power doesn't negotiate with falsehood. It dismantles it by simply standing present. And in that moment, their fear is the proof that their lies never had a foundation to begin with. Number 6, their eyes betray the script they rehearsed. People spend so much of their lives writing and perfecting a version of themselves they want others to believe. They polish their tone, rehearse their confidence, memorize lines that make them sound competent, brave, or untouchable. They build entire stories about who they are, stories designed to hold up under casual glances and small talk. But all of that practice collapses in an instant when someone enters the room whose presence is unfiltered and real. In that moment, Their eyes can't keep up with the performance their mouth is trying to maintain. The eyes are always the first to falter. They shift too quickly, blink too fast, or linger too long. Pupils widen, brows tighten. A flicker of panic appears for a fraction of a second. Those small movements are their soul whispering the truth that their words are working overtime to hide. Every excuse they've prepared, every layer of their carefully constructed identity begins to dissolve because your presence doesn't buy the performance. You don't even have to say anything. Their own body testifies against them. That's why it's so powerful. The eyes are the one part of a person that can't rehearse well. You can fake a smile, modulate your tone, even act relaxed with your posture. But the eyes are involuntary. They tell on you. They confess what your mouth refuses to say. And when you walk in, their eyes aren't just looking at you, they're revealing their own cracks. They're confessing, I'm not who I pretend to be, even if the lips keep insisting otherwise. This is why presence can be more disruptive than confrontation. Confrontation gives people a chance to defend themselves, to argue, to retreat behind more stories. But presence leaves no space for defense. It doesn't accuse. It simply reveals. And in that revelation, their rehearsed identity breaks apart under the weight of the truth they're hiding from. The flicker in their eyes is not just fear, it's admission. It's the raw moment where performance and reality collide. And in that collision, every fragile story they built about themselves dissolves, leaving only what's real. And their pupils confess it before they even realize it's happening. Number 7, fear is the shadow cast by someone else's dominance. That's why it's so revealing. It doesn't appear out of nowhere, it doesn't invent itself, and it doesn't exist without a source. Their eyes, when they shift or flicker with unease, are not showing random nerves. They're showing that something greater has entered their space, and their reaction is the shadow it creates. Shadows only exist when there is something solid enough to block the light. Their fear is the proof that your presence has that solidity. This is what most people don't understand about power. It isn't loud. It doesn't always show itself through raised voices or heavy gestures. Real dominance can be completely silent because it doesn't need to announce itself. The reactions of others do the announcing. When their eyes change, when they shrink back, when their breath shortens, what they're really doing is admitting that they've already placed you higher in the unseen order. They've crowned you without ceremony, without words, without consent. Their fear is their declaration. It's important to see the truth here. Fear is not respect, and fear is not admiration, but it is recognition. It is the body's way of saying, I know who holds the weight here. Even if their pride refuses to acknowledge it, their eyes betray them. That flash of fear is involuntary. It's the shadow that dominance casts, a shadow they cannot control, a shadow they cannot outrun. The beauty of this is how simple it is. You don't have to demand the crown. You don't have to chase it. Their fear hands it over to you. The hierarchy has already been decided before a single word is spoken, and it's visible in the most honest way possible through their gaze. So when you see that look, understand it for what it is. It isn't weakness, it isn't coincidence, and it isn't about intimidation. It's the natural result of dominance revealing itself. Shadows can only fall when something greater is standing in the way of the light. Their fear is the shadow, and you are the greater force that makes it possible. Number 8, you didn't intimidate them. They exposed their fragility. That's the truth people rarely admit. They'll point fingers and say you came across too strong, too sharp, too certain, when in reality, you did nothing more than exist as you are. The calm you carry, the ease in your movements, the steadiness in your presence, that's what unsettles them. not because it threatens them, but because it highlights the cracks they've been trying to cover. Fragility always looks for someone else to blame. Instead of admitting the insecurity that was already brewing inside, they project it outward and call it intimidation. But intimidation is intentional. It's a strategy. Fragility, on the other hand, is involuntary. It leaks out through shaky tones, nervous glances, and restless gestures. They weren't made fragile by your presence. They were already fragile before you walked in. You just made it visible. This is why calm power is so misunderstood. People think strength must be loud, aggressive, or forceful, but real strength often moves in silence. That silence doesn't create fear, it uncovers it. Their discomfort has nothing to do with you trying to dominate, and everything to do with the fact that your steadiness magnifies their instability. It's not that you pressed on their weakness, it's that they realized in your presence how weak the ground beneath them really was. And here's the irony. The more you remain centered, the more they scramble to prove that they aren't shaken. They'll talk more, exaggerate more, insist louder, just to distract from the truth. But the eyes always betray them. Their reaction gives them away long before their mouth tries to compensate. What you're seeing isn't the result of intimidation, it's the exposure of fragility. So don't mistake their unease as proof of something you did wrong. Don't water down your presence to make it easier for them to hold their mask. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Their fragility was already living inside them long before you arrived. All you did was step into the room and remind them of it. The fracture was always there. They just couldn't hide it anymore. Number 9. When they fear you, they hand you the script. That's the quiet exchange happening long before words ever leave anyone's mouth. The look in their eyes isn't just nervousness. It's a form of surrender. In that flicker of fear, they're acknowledging that you're setting the tempo, the tone, and the energy of the space. Whether they realize it or not, their reactions shift from being self-directed to being a response to you. It's not about intimidation. It's about control of the narrative without even trying. Fear has a way of reorganizing a room. People start measuring their words, softening their tone, adjusting their posture. They give longer pauses, check your face for cues, and anticipate your reactions. All of this happens automatically. That's the script they're handing over. They're waiting for you to decide what comes next. And because fear short-circuits performance, they stop leading and start reacting. You're not just in the room anymore, you're directing it. The irony is that this control isn't always visible. You're not issuing orders, making demands, or trying to dominate. You're simply present, but your presence itself becomes the command. That's what real power looks like. Influence without effort, leadership without announcement. The silence around you isn't awkward. It's the atmosphere resetting itself to your frequency. And here's the sharper truth. When someone hands you the script out of fear, they've already conceded authority, even if they never say it. They'll try to mask it with politeness, forced confidence, or even defensiveness. But the subtle shifts don't lie. The eyes, the hesitations, the glances for approval, they're all confessions of who now holds the pen. This is why the look in their eyes matters more than the words they speak. Words can be rehearsed, but reactions can't. Fear rewires behavior instantly, and in that rewiring, the balance of control becomes obvious. Without you uttering a single command, you've become the author of the moment. And once someone hands you the script, they've given up the power to control the story. From that point on, the room moves to your rhythm, whether you choose to speak or stay silent. Number 10. Fear is loyalty in its rawest form. It's not the kind of loyalty people brag about or willingly sign up for, but it's loyalty all the same. The tremor in their gaze, the hesitation in their movements, the way their body reacts before their mind can catch up. All of it is proof that they've already aligned themselves to the hierarchy you set. They may never admit it out loud, and they may even resist it with their words. But their instincts betray them. The body recognizes what the ego refuses to accept. Loyalty, at its core, is about alignment. Sometimes it's born from admiration, sometimes from trust, and sometimes from fear. Fear doesn't create devotion, but it does create obedience. It's the primal acknowledgement that someone else holds more weight, that someone else dictates the unseen rules of the space. That acknowledgement might not look like respect on the surface, but at its foundation, it's still recognition of authority, and recognition is the seed of loyalty, whether welcomed or resisted. This is why fear is so revealing. It shows you who has already surrendered, even if their mouth is still trying to sound bold. They may never willingly follow you, but their body has already cast its vote. The tremor in their gaze is them silently stepping into line, even as their pride screams otherwise. And once the body obeys, the mind eventually follows, because no one can live in conflict with themselves forever. Fear as loyalty is not about cruelty, and it's not about exploitation. It's about the natural order revealing itself. Hierarchies don't need contracts or declarations. They are written in the way people respond under pressure. And fear is the clearest signature. When their eyes shake in your presence, when their words stumble though they practiced them, they've already agreed to the terms. They've placed you above them, even if they try to deny it. So while fear may never win you their heart, it secures their position. They may resist, but resistance doesn't erase the hierarchy. It only confirms it. In the rawest sense, their fear is loyalty because it binds them to the order they've already recognized. And that loyalty is stronger than anything they could have spoken willingly, because it wasn't chosen. It was confessed. Number 11, you become the clock they can't outrun. Fear isn't just about power, it's about inevitability. When you walk in, you're not only a presence, you're a countdown. Every glance of fear you see in their eyes is time itself whispering that their moment of reckoning has arrived sooner than expected. They feel it instinctively. Your presence speeds up everything they've been delaying. Avoiding or pretending doesn't exist. You are no longer just a person to them. You're a living reminder that the deadline on their illusions is no longer theoretical. It's here. Most people build their lives on postponement. They postpone truth, postpone accountability, postpone facing the cost of their choices. They convince themselves there's always more time to fix things, to hide things, to reinvent the story before anyone notices. But when someone with real presence walks in, all that postponed time collapses. Their excuses no longer stretch far enough. Their story no longer sounds convincing, even to themselves. And in that instant, they feel the clock ticking, loudly. That's why fear shows up in their eyes so quickly. It's not just intimidation, it's anticipation. They're looking at you and feeling that the moment they've been dreading is now unavoidable. Your presence accelerates the consequences they've been trying to push back. It makes the gap between their facade and reality too wide to cross. You don't have to point it out. The ticking does the work for you. This is also why their reactions seem frantic, erratic, or overly defensive. They're not responding to your words. They're reacting to the sense that time has just moved against them. Every glance, every tremor, every awkward pause is them hearing that clock inside their head, louder and louder. You are the embodiment of that moment, not because you're punishing them, but because truth always moves faster than deception once it arrives. There's no escape from that kind of time. They can't slow it, can't pause it, can't bargain with it. When you show up, you don't just hold presence. You hold inevitability, and that inevitability is what terrifies them most. In their eyes, you're not simply a person. You're the countdown they can't outrun, and their fear is the proof that the clock has already started. Number 12, Their eyes admit what their mouths deny. Words can be bent, twisted, and dressed up to sound convincing, but eyes don't have the same luxury. They don't rehearse, they don't negotiate, and they don't disguise well under pressure. That's why people can swear loyalty, claim confidence, or insist they're unfazed. Yet one glance at their eyes tells a completely different story. The body doesn't lie the way the tongue does, and fear always leaks through the gaze first. Words are cheap, and bravado is cheaper. Anyone can talk tough, put on a show, or craft a speech to defend their ego. But the eyes are involuntary. They flinch, widen, dart, or lower, movements that betray what the mouth is trying to cover. That's why the gaze matters more than the sentence. In the courtroom of truth, the eyes are the only ones under oath, and they confess without hesitation. This is where presence has its sharpest power. When you step in, their eyes react before they even realize it. The pupils tell the truth faster than the mind can build a defense. And in that reaction, you're given insight into everything their mouth will try to deny later. You'll see fear when they claim composure. You'll see hesitation when they speak with fake certainty. You'll see surrender when their lips still form words of defiance. The contradiction is impossible to hide. And the more they talk, the clearer the contrast becomes. Every sentence they add is an attempt to wrestle back control, but their eyes remain the witness that can't be coached. It's the reason seasoned leaders, interrogators, and even ordinary observers always say, "Don't just listen, look," because the truth rarely survives in words, but it always leaks through the gaze. So when their eyes shift, when they flicker with fear or falter in steadiness, understand it for what it is, not weakness, not coincidence, but testimony. They may keep denying it with their voice, but their eyes already confessed the reality they can't escape. And once the eyes admit it, no amount of bravado can erase the verdict. Number 13, fear isn't weakness, it's confession. That's what most people fail to grasp. They think fear in someone's eyes is a sign of fragility, of cracks in character, or of a lack of strength. But fear runs deeper than that. It's not simply about being unsettled. It's the body's way of admitting a truth the ego can't bring itself to say out loud. When you see that tremor in their gaze, you're not just witnessing anxiety. You're witnessing an unspoken admission. You hold the leverage, and I know it before you even speak. That's what makes it so powerful. Unlike words, fear isn't staged. You can rehearse speeches, you can craft arguments, you can even mimic confidence, but fear can't be dressed up. It bypasses performance and shows up raw, without a filter. It's a confession given against their will, and the eyes are the place it leaks out first. No matter how hard they try to project control, the pupils widen, the glance flickers, and the body whispers the truth they hoped would stay hidden. And here's the difference. Weakness pleads for safety, but fear acknowledges hierarchy. It's not about being broken down. It's about recognizing where the balance of power actually rests. In that sense, fear is not frailty at all. It's honesty. Brutal, involuntary honesty. When their eyes shift in your presence, they're not just shaken. They're confessing, "I've already measured myself against you, and I know where I stand." The confession is deeper than words could ever go, because words can lie. Words can deny, distract, or pretend. Fear has no such option. It's primal. It's instinctive. It's the soul signing a contract the ego refuses to read. And once that contract is written in the language of trembling eyes, there's no erasing it. So don't mistake fear for fragility. Don't water it down to pity or overlook it as insecurity. Recognize it for what it really is, a confession that you hold the leverage before you've made a single move. They admitted the truth without meaning to, and their eyes spoke louder than anything their mouth could ever fabricate. Fear isn't weakness. It's the purest form of acknowledgement. Number 14. When you walk in and fear appears, the room has voted. Power isn't always declared with words, banners, or speeches. It's often decided in silence. A crowd doesn't need to raise their hands or break into applause to announce who holds the weight. They decide with their eyes, with the way conversations stall, with the sudden shift in the atmosphere the moment you arrive. That silence isn't empty, it's loaded. It's the sound of recognition moving through the room like a current. People underestimate how quickly a collective judgment forms. It doesn't take hours of debate or visible agreement. It happens in seconds. The glances exchanged, the way eyes dart toward you, the hushed tones that follow. Those are the votes being cast. And the truth is, they already crowned you before you even sat down. Their fear isn't scattered or random, it's unified. It's the room unconsciously aligning around the fact that your presence has tilted the balance. That's the strange thing about authority. It doesn't always arrive by force. Sometimes it arrives simply by existing. You didn't demand the room's attention, but they gave it anyway. You didn't ask for the silence, but it formed naturally, and you didn't request recognition, but the eyes already handed it to you. Fear becomes the collective acknowledgement that the hierarchy has been decided, whether anyone speaks it or not. This is why fear in a room feels heavier than words. Words can flatter, deny, or resist, but fear doesn't play games. It's too instinctive, too immediate to be staged. And when that fear is visible not just in one person, but in the tone of the entire room, the verdict is final. They've decided who holds the crown, and it isn't based on what you said, it's based on what they felt. So when you see that silence, those darting glances, that shift in atmosphere, understand it clearly. The vote has already been cast. The room doesn't need ceremony, applause, or permission to declare it. Their fear is the announcement. Their eyes are the crown. And by the time you've taken your seat, they've already settled the matter. The room belongs to you. Fear is never random, and it's never meaningless. Every flicker in their eyes, every pause in their voice, every silence that falls when you step in, it all tells a story that words can't cover up. What they call discomfort is recognition. What they call intimidation is exposure. And what they call unease is nothing more than confession. Their eyes betray the scripts they rehearsed. Their fear collapses the lies they built. And their trembling gaze becomes the vote that crowns you before you even speak. Understand this: you don't create their fear, you reveal it. You don't force their fragility, you uncover it. Your presence isn't an attack, it's a mirror, a clock, a verdict. It strips away performance, dissolves illusions, and exposes the hierarchy they swore didn't exist. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is loyalty. Fear is confession. Fear is proof. And when you walk into a room and see that fear appear, remember, the decision has already been made. You don't need to argue for your power. You don't need to explain it. And you don't need to beg for recognition. The room has already voted, and their eyes have already handed you the crown. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're always first to see the truths most people are too blind to notice. Like this video, if it gave you chills, comment your thoughts below. Tell me what part shook you the most, and share it with someone who needs to see the power of presence in action. Don't just watch, be part of the movement. Your next level starts here. Stay blessed always.